All right. Now is the time where we talk about 360 cameras. So this first camera that I want to talk about today is called the 360 One X. Now, spoiler alert, this is my favorite camera right now. This is the camera that if I were to recommend one camera to a real estate agent jumping into 360, this is the one I would recommend. At this moment in time, April 1st, 2020. And the reason is many, actually. So we're going to go through some of the selling points, the pros and the cons of this camera, one by one. So here we go. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is the price point on this camera. This camera is $400, which is kind of middle of the road for 360 cameras right now. It's maybe a little bit on the high end of a consumer camera, but it's a very good price. You can get 360 cameras under $100, and we may do some reviews on some of those. So this is an excellent camera. In my opinion, this is the best value you can get of any 360 camera right now in the market. Now this camera was released in October of 2018, so it's about a year and a half old, but it's kind of the workhorse of the industry. So many people have this camera. And actually, if you go online and do some research, you'll find that, you might find more people than on other cameras have broken the lens. These lenses protrude out on either side of the camera. And this one, you'll find more information on that. But the reason you'll find more information is because so many people have this camera. It is an excellent camera. The thing that it does better than anybody, in my opinion, is video. So there's a lot of aspects to video. There's stabilization, there's how saturated your images look, there's how crisp your images look. I'm going to give this one an A+ on video because it looks amazing. You can see here that it shoots 5.7K video at 30 frames per second. Now that is more than you're going to need as a real estate agent, most likely. Right now, YouTube only allows, I think it's 4K for 360 video. So this has roughly 40% more pixels than you're going to be able to showcase on YouTube. But in my opinion, that's not a big deal. And with this, you'll see 5K, 23 megapixels, all sorts of numbers like this. In my experience, I don't know all the technical stuff on the back end in great detail, but a pixel is not a pixel is not a pixel. Not all pixels are created equally. As I've looked at this stuff, there's one camera on here that I'll talk about a little later that advertises 8K. That camera is not that drastically different from 4K and 5.7K cameras that I see in here. So I wouldn't be misled if one has 5.3K and one has 5.7K. That's not necessarily meaning that one camera is better than the other. This camera also shoots 50 frames per second and 100 frames per second. You will not need this. I can say with a fair amount of confidence that as a real estate agent, you're not going to need this high frame rate. Remember, the 360 cameras evolved around kind of extreme sports, so skateboarding like this guy, or wakeboarding, or snowboarding, or jumping out of airplanes, or all this extreme stuff that sometimes it's really helpful to do a slow-mo capture of you're jumping your skateboard or something. But for what we're going to be doing, walking around homes, talking, smoothness and audio quality are much more important than frame rate. Okay, so this camera also shoots in HDR. So what that basically means is it looks better. You can see more of the variance between light and dark. You can see here, this is just a still capture, left and right. And all these screen captures that I'm showing you here are taken directly from the Insta360.com website or the websites from the other cameras. So it's basically just a way that the computer or the software on the phone or on the computer or within the camera makes the photo look better. And it does a darn good job on this camera. It does a very good job. So you can see kind of the midtones are more drawn out in the right photo versus the left photo. The midtones get a little washed out and it tends to be a lot wider in the clouds and a lot darker in the valleys. But on the right photo, you see a lot more variation in the sky and a lot more variation in the landscape. one more point on this. This camera takes really good photos. There's another camera we're going to talk about that takes better photos, but in my opinion, this camera takes great photos for most of what you're doing. Now, this is the key selling point, for me anyway, for this camera. And it's really more of a commentary on Insta360 as a company. What they call flow state stabilization is, how smooth the ride, in this case of the bicycle, but how smooth the camera is when you're moving around. Is the camera jiggling around a lot and making the user really dizzy? Or does it stay somewhat stable so that it's more about the user looking left, right, up, down? That's the jiggle that they'll feel, not the jiggle of the actual camera. So this flow state stabilization is remarkable, and it allows us to do so many things that, from a video point of view, so many things that we could never do before. It eliminates the need for high quality, I love videographers, but the more trained they are, the more expensive they are, and the more gear they have. So they have to have a gimbal to make sure their shot's real steady, and they have to have someone that knows how to work that gimbal, and then post-production, how you editing that. This actually is a game changer in the video world. But for your 360 videos that we shoot and we put online just getting started, this is also a really important feature. So that's the main aspect of this camera, my favorite aspect of this camera. Insta360 was the first one to talk about this invisible selfie stick. Basically, the selfie stick, because how 360 cameras work is they have two fisheye lenses that overlap and blend or stitch together. And so they found a way to kind of make that pole disappear altogether when you're walking around a property, carrying it and talking. And so it looks like you just kind of have a fist and you're walking around. So that's a pretty cool feature. To be honest, it's not the biggest deal if they see a little bit of pole or maybe something sticking out of your pole. Like sometimes I like to tape a clipboard or a notepad to my pole to remind me of notes as I'm walking a property. And you just see a line at the bottom. You see the two sides of the top of a clipboard. But it is a great feature to kind of make that pole disappear. I put this slide up here. Again, this is from the Insta360.com website, just because the software, the app, the software on the computer, and just the overall workflow, how easy it is to get a photo or a video from the camera to your online source, wherever you want that to be. I find that Insta360 is my favorite. It's a very good workflow, and it's got great software, and they're always innovating. And I feel like they are really taking greater strides than many other companies out there. Now you can also Wi-Fi transfer with Insta360 One X. You don't need a cable. You can have a cable to go a little bit faster, but my experience is it has been no problem. I own this camera, by the way, and I love this camera. 4 of the cameras I'm going to talk about today, 5 of them rather, that I'm going to talk about today, I have 5 of the 8. But this is the one that I would recommend. It has things like a battery. You can take out the battery. On some of the other cameras, the battery is stuck inside. But having separate batteries, if you so choose, is convenient if you have a longer shoot. Like maybe you're doing a long video walkthrough and you can't get it quite right. You're having to kind of try it a few times. On some cameras, you'll run out of juice in 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. On this camera, you can go 60 minutes and then you can pop another battery in and go another 60 minutes if you need to. So that's a selling feature. And this will probably not be very important for most people, but there are really good plugins that plug into the Adobe software for Insta360. Now, this is one of the huge selling points. I want you to look up here at the 360 cameras that Matterport supports. This is from the Matterport website, and they only support 3 consumer cameras. This is the 360 One X that we're talking about right now. This is the Theta V that we'll talk about in a little bit. And this is the Theta Z1. We're going to talk about all 3 of these cameras here today, but this is one of the big 3. Previously you had to have one of these guys. which had a crazy price tag. And this is the cheaper price. It's come down significantly. I think it was around $5,000 when it came out. And not only that, you had to learn you had to learn how to use the hardware, you had to learn how to use the software, but it was the only gig in town, and if for this level of tour for so long. And if you've been in this industry for very long, you know that Matterport is kind of the Rolls Royce of 360 tours out there. You know, they can do a lot of stuff with the data. They can pull great listing MLS photos from the footage that they shoot. The downside is it takes a long time to shoot with this camera, this big $3,000 camera, and there's a huge learning curve. So it's really only beneficial if it's a big brokerage and maybe you have someone on hand, or maybe you have a videographer in town that does these, and they usually charge, about $800 or so. Somewhere in the $800 range is most of the Matterport tours that I've seen have cost. At $400 for the camera, and then throughout the course we'll talk about how much it costs to do the virtual tours. This is the way to go. And you can do a 360 virtual tour with Matterport with one of these 3 cameras. So it's just stunning. And this is for sure where the industry's going. I hope Matterport continues to innovate, because they need a lot more than 3 cameras to keep up. But this will be a huge selling point for many agents. So this is one of the 3 cameras that works with Matterport. And it's really what bumps this camera over the edge, over another camera I'm going to recommend here in a little bit, because it right now, April 1st, 2020, does work with Matterport. So just in quick review, it shoots great video. Flow state is a must. Their flow state stabilization software is really good. Now, granted, all of the different cameras that I talk about today are going to have some equivalent of stabilization software, but in my opinion, flow state stabilization with Insta360 products is the best. Obviously, it captures 360 photos. Slow motion, you won't need. Invisible selfie stick is helpful. Wi-Fi transfer is great. HDR is great. Time shift, not going to be very important for you. But sound quality, we didn't talk about sound quality. I would give this an A on sound quality, because it has several microphones built in. I think it's got 4 microphones built in. It sounds really good. Granted, it's going to be 4 feet from your face, so as you're walking around a house. So it's not going to be as nice as a microphone that's like right up on your mouth, like the one I'm using. But it's good enough. And if you can see some of my other videos where I do 360 walkthroughs, you can see kind of what the kind of sound you're going to be getting. Plenty good for showcasing a home doing a 360 walkthrough. So that is my assessment of the Insta360 One X. I know this camera's been out for 1.5 years, but it's still one of the best values that you're going to find out there. In fact, it's the best value you're going to find at this moment in time for all the things it does. So if you haven't got a camera already, I would jump on over to Amazon or to the Insta360.com site and get one of these. So you can get this camera as a standalone, or you can get a package deal that would include a selfie stick and a micro SD card. You're going to absolutely need the micro SD card, because you can't use this camera without a micro SD card. It does not have built-in memory. So you're going to want to get that in whatever package you get. And I would recommend getting the selfie stick and some sort of a tripod that screws into the bottom of a selfie stick. Amazon's full of package deals that include all those things. And I would recommend grabbing one of those just so you have everything you need to get started. It'll cost somewhere in the $450 range to get all that stuff, but $450, $470 in addition to the inclusive of the camera. The camera is $400 of that. Okay, that's my recommendation for the Insta360 One X.